you about life. It's just so difficult to be alive and try to function. There are all these people to deal with. I was at the supermarket the other day, trying to buy a can of tuna fish, and there was this person standing right in front of where I wanted to reach out and grab my can of tuna fish. So I waited a while to see if they'd move, and they didn't. They were looking at the tuna fish too, reading the ingredients on each can as if they were a book. A pretty boring book, if you ask me. But nobody has. So anyways, I waited a long while, and they didn't move. And I thought about asking them to move, but it seemed so stupid of them not to have sense that I needed to get by them, that I had this awful fear that it would do no good at all to ask them. They'd probably say something like, "Well, move when we're goddamn ready, you nagging bitch!" And then, what would I do? I started to cry, out of frustration, quietly though, so as not to disturb anyone. And even though I was softly sobbing, the stupid person didn't grasp that I needed to get by him to reach the goddamn tuna fish! People are so sensitive, I just hate them! And so, I reached over with my fist, and I brought it down real hard on his head, and I screamed, "Would you kindly move, asshole?" And the person fell to the ground, and I was totally startled, and some child nearby started to cry, and I was still crying, and I couldn't think of making any use of the tuna fish can now anyways, so I shouted at the child to stop crying, and I ran out of the supermarket. And I thought, okay, I'll take a taxi to the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Yes, I need to be surrounded by things of culture and value around me. Not tuna fish. But you know how hard it is to hail a taxi. I waved my hand, and the terrible person who came to the street after I was there waved his hand, and the taxi stopped for him because he saw him first. And the injustice of it all made my heart start to well in tears again. So I lost the taxi. And then the next 3 taxis were already full. Although one of them still had his free light on, which made me so angry. Because if he wouldn't have had it on, I wouldn't have raised my arm in the first place, which was getting tired now. I think hitting the man with the tuna fish can made me use some muscles I'm not really used to using. Anyways, and then this lady with the groceries came out, and another taxi started to get near, and she started to hail at it. So I went right over to her, and I shouted smack into her ear, "If you take this taxi from me, I will kill you!" And she looked totally startled. And the taxi stopped and I got in. And I told the taxi driver, "Take me to the Metropolitan Museum of Art. I've had a terrible day at the supermarket, and I need to be surrounded by things of value and culture around me." And then the taxi driver, who was Greek or Armenian or Muslim or whatever, said, "Lady, please, I have to go downtown now. I'm about to get off work." Well, I thought my head would explode. I mean, was this taxi available or wasn't it? And wasn't it law that they can't refuse you, even if you want to go to Staten Island? Look, I just couldn't bear the thought of pressing charges against this man. It would take days and days of phone calls and letters, and all because you wouldn't bring me to the goddamn Metropolitan. Anyways, so I just sat there. Then I started to think about going back and following my initial impulse to buy a can of tuna fish. Yes. Tuna fish mixed with mayonnaise is one of the few things I can do in the kitchen. But then I thought that most probably the person who was at the cash register would give me difficulties. Probably because I was a woman, or because she was a woman, or because he was a man who hated women, or wished he was a woman. Anyways, it all started to seem far too complicated. So I said to myself, okay, I'll just sit in this taxi, and I'll be damned if I get out. And then the taxi driver said, "Lady, please, I have to go back home to my family." And I thought, okay, I won't even argue. I'll just sit here. And then he started to shout at me, obscenities and so on. And I said, okay, well, at least I'm sitting down. Probably he'll decide it's just easier to drive me to the Metropolitan. But then I started to think that maybe I didn't want to go to the Metropolitan anyways. Look, I was hungry for starters. Maybe a movie and some popcorn and a Diet Coke and those chocolate-covered ice cream balls. What are they called? They cost about $2.50 at the movie theater, which is a ridiculously expensive price, but anyways. Then, what movie would I see? And before I could ask for any recommendations, he pulled the cab out into the traffic in a great big hurry. It made me sort of lurch out of my seat, and I screamed, I've changed my mind, I want to go see a movie! And he said he was taking me to the police station. And I said, okay, but isn't he in the wrong refusing a fare? But then, you know, all the stories you've heard about police brutality and all. Maybe they'd have one of those electrical devices that they didn't shock me even though I wasn't Puerto Rican. Anyways, I didn't think going to the police station was worth it as a risk. So when he stopped at the stoplight, violently, I might add, I could really sue. But litigation seems far too complicated, and here I am, I can't even buy a can of tuna fish. I swung the cab door open, and I shouted into his open window, "Your mother sucks socks in hell!" Which sounded kind of funny, I know, but I was too angry to laugh at the moment. And then his tire almost ran over my foot, but luckily I fell back into the gutter. Are you all following so far?